So, J. Ruud, what lovable book are we talking about today?
Well, I'll give you a hint. Stacey Margaret Jones. And the hint is West Egg.
The Great Gatsby.
Great Gatsby it is. Didn't even need my other hints.
Welcome back to Between the Covers with my husband, Jay Ruud, and I'm Stacey Margaret Jones. And just for funsies, why don't you share your other hints with us before we move on to
hint
discuss?
Number 2 was going to be Dr. T.J. Eckelberg.
Oh my! If you'd led with that, I would have had no idea.
I should have led with that. Should have led with that one. He's the guy.
No, let's do the other hint.
The third hint was Jazz Age.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
But Eckelberg is the eye doctor whose billboard is kind of overlooking the Valley of Ashes.
Right.
That's like the eyes of God looking at you.
I think that was the image on the copy I had, the paperback.
That's
so. Okay. That's interesting.
Art.
All right. So our book this episode is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald.
There you go. That's a good old name. What year did this come out?
1925.
Okay. Oh, the year my mother was born.
Exactly. Your mother is the same age as
The Great Gatsby. So it'll be 100 next year, just like my mom. Okay, so who else thinks this book is lovable? I mean, we don't have 2 months to make the list. It's not a lot of lists, isn't it?
It's not a lot of lists. This is one of the no-brainers. You can't have a list of the greatest books in English without this one. It came in as number 1 in Time Magazine's list of the 100 greatest books since 1923. Mm-hmm. Although I think that was chronological, not the order that they intended. But it was number 2 on the Modern Library list that had come out in 1998, right behind Ulysses. Mm-hmm. And it's on the Guardian list of the top English language novels. It's on the Observer's list of 100 greatest novels of the world. It came in as number 3 on the Penguin list of must-read classics as chosen by their readers. So it seems pretty clear that just about everybody loves this book.
Not just critics, but also readers as well.
Yeah.
That's interesting because we just got back from a trip where we walked around and saw F. Scott Fitzgerald sites.
We did.
In St. Paul, Minnesota.
In St. Paul, Minnesota. We saw where the house he was born in, the house he moved back to, and then moved out of again when he made enough money to get the heck out of the Midwest.
The school he went to.
The school that he went to,
that he went to. Just in case any of our listeners are interested, it is the Summit Hill Historic Neighborhood in St. Paul. And while you're looking for F. Scott Fitzgerald sites, you will see some beautiful homes. It's the street with the most number of continuous Victorian homes or something like that in the country. Yeah. And there's beautiful Victorian row houses that are absolutely stunning. It's just a wonderful place to walk around. So we did that recently. All right. So it's on those lists. Give us the down and dirty summary before we move on to why you think of this book as a contender.
Okay. So the narrator of the book, Nick Carraway, has just moved to Long Island. He's working in New York as a bond salesman after World War I. He has a neighbor, a kind of mysterious neighbor who lives in this huge house, this guy named Gatsby. And he doesn't know anything about him, but he knows that he's got this huge house and he throws gigantic parties all the time. Nick has a distant cousin named Daisy Buchanan, and she lives with her old money millionaire husband named Tom. And Nick knew Tom at Yale. Mm-hmm. They had both been to Yale universities. So Daisy and Tom just moved there from Chicago. They have a mansion of their own, which is kind of across a bay from Gatsby's house. Mm-hmm. Gatsby lives in West Egg.
That's fictional, right?
Yeah. They live in East Egg.
Because I nannied in Oyster Bay. So that's, I think, the area. Maybe, or maybe that's farther out.
It doesn't seem that far out.
Yeah, it's probably the Oyster Bay area then.
At one point, Gatsby actually invites Nick to one of his parties. And he talks to him there, and he tells him about the fact that he loves Daisy. He knew Daisy before the war. The novel is set in 1922.
So not long after World War I.
Right. It's written in 1925. It's set in 1922, 4 years after the war. Gatsby was in love with Daisy, When he gets back from the war, she's already married to Tom. But he makes up his mind that he wants to have her and decides he's going to basically become as rich as he possibly can and figures that's going to win her over. He wants Nick to sort of help him get in touch with her. And so through Nick...
Because Nick knows her husband.
Nick knows her husband, but he's also her cousin.
That's right.
Not her first cousin. But
so he knows both of them.
Yeah,
he
knows both of them, but he's closer to Daisy because they're relatives. So he wants Nick to help him meet Daisy or get reacquainted with Daisy, which he does. And then things happen, which are not always happy. But I don't want to give away too many spoilers.
So it's about the interpersonal relationships of these characters, but it's also specifically a place and time in American history.
Yeah. It's the Jazz Age. It's the Roaring Twenties. You can give these huge parties. It's Prohibition time, but Gatsby has no problem having a lot of liquor at his parties. You find out ultimately that basically he's a bootlegger or is affiliated with bootleggers, and that's where he gets all his money. Although he's also affiliated with gamblers because he knows the guy who fixed the 1919 World Series.
That's right.
He's with Nick in a bar, and he said, "The guy over there, that's the guy who fixed the 1919 World Series." And he's apparently kind of connected to him too. So gambling and booze are where he makes all his money. It's a book that's about the American dream. The American dream says anybody from any class, and he's basically working class to begin with. Gatsby is, which is why he feels that Daisy didn't care about him. And he's become rich in America, which you can do according to the American dream if you just work hard enough. Especially if you are willing to break the law. Exactly. This is, it's like The Sopranos. It's
right. Well, The Sopranos is about the American dream.
Exactly.
Absolutely. It's this one kind of iteration of it. So it's not, unlike that. We were just watching the documentary about David Chase. That's why you mentioned that.
Exactly.
So why is this book lovable? Obviously I think the story is going to pull you in, the plot of it. The setting, I think we have, as Americans, we have a kind of false nostalgia for the Jazz Age and the Roaring Twenties and, before the crash and the Depression, et cetera. But why is it particularly lovable or deserving to be on your list?
There are two sort of archetypal things about this book that makes it a story that appeals to people at all times, I think. In the first place, it's a tragedy. It follows all the Aristotelian tenets of tragedy.
I was going to ask if you mean Greek tragedy, which of course you do.
Of course I do.
What else?
What else is there? Aristotle says that the tragic hero is somebody who is better than the average person in some way.
But the fall is from an inherent flaw.
No, he doesn't say that.
Oh, I thought that was...
That's a Renaissance interpretation.
Oh.
What Aristotle says is that the fall takes place because of the character's hamartia. And hamartia literally means failure to hit the mark. And basically, it's an error of judgment.
Sure, okay.
And sometimes your hamartia may actually be something that's part of what made you a good person. Now, Oedipus, who's Aristotle's archetypal tragic hero, Oedipus falls because he doesn't want to kill his father and marry his mother, which is,
not bad.
Not a bad thing. This is not a flaw. This is not a flaw of any kind.
Right.
He just wants to do the right thing. And trying to do the right thing, he runs right into the wrong thing.
Right.
Gatsby makes himself into a rich man, somebody who is in a lot of ways higher than the average person, and
successful.
He's successful, but he's also admirable. Nick begins the book by talking about why he admired Gatsby. He says it was an extraordinary gift of hope that motivated Gatsby, a romantic readiness such as I have never found in any other person, and which is not likely I shall ever find again. No, Gatsby turned out all right in the end. It was what preyed on Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams. That's that valley of ashes.
The wasteland.
Yeah, that temporarily closed out my interest in the abortive sorrows and short-winded elations of men. But Gatsby, is somebody that he thinks of not just above the average person in terms of his income, but in terms of his character, that he had this romantic streak that he'd never found in anybody else. And Gatsby really is a romantic. And actually, this is going into the other reason that I think there's an archetypal pull in the story. Anyway, Gatsby falls because he wants Daisy to love him. And he'd do anything that she asks him. And I don't want to make a spoiler here, but she does something which is wrong. In fact, it's a terrible thing. And he decides he's going to take the blame for it. And so his self-sacrifice is what pulls him down and makes him a tragic hero. The other archetype that we see in The Great Gatsby is the wasteland. Now, this comes out in 1925. The most important poem of the 20th century in English was published in 1922, and it's T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, which looks at the modern world as a wasteland, something where the values have gone, and it's nothing but this sort of valley of ashes.
But isn't that a call on the Arthurian?
Yeah,
king?
It's also, in the Arthurian legend, the Grail Knight can heal the wound of the Fisher King. And that will restore the fertility of the wasteland. Gatsby sees himself as a knight.
Okay, I was going to ask, who's the Fisher King? Or is there one? Is it not that tight of an analogy?
I don't think it's that tight of an analogy. Right. I mean, I think the idea is just healing the wasteland.
And Gatsby, that does make sense that he's a kind of chivalrous knight, right? Because knights want the love of, right?
Yes.
They do all these feats of strength and acts of courage and, because they're in pursuit of the love of a woman.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that makes sense.
He becomes rich. He does all these things to impress her. And then in the end, he even goes further than that and wants to protect her, sacrificing himself because she's the ideal.
Right. In a way, impoverishing himself.
Yeah. Part of the tragedy is she ain't worth it. She's really not a very nice person.
And also, you can't make someone love you.
No, he's trying awful hard.
But you can't make them. That's beyond your control. And I suppose that's interesting because at a time where rich white men have a great deal of agency, there also are things they can't make happen.
Yeah.
There's still things they can't control.
And that's one of them.
That's one of them.
But Nick, still, the beginning of the book, he's talking after the end of the book. So, because he's remembering.
Right. So he has a perspective of knowing the whole story. He's not sharing it as he kind of goes.
Yeah.
He's recalling.
He's recalling Gatsby as this admirable, chivalrous, tragic hero.
It's interesting to me, too, how this book comes, you might say, it's kind of the next era after what Edith Wharton is writing about. The Gilded Age.
Yeah.
This rich people, right? Masters of their, all they survey, etc. But they're different because some of them are old money, right? And they live in an old world, and they have their own nobility and aristocracy and the rules of that. And then you move on into the 20s, where Gatsby is a knight, and yet his money is new money made illegally.
Yeah.
But he still builds his own kind of kingdom or court with his parties and
Yeah.
in pursuit of this woman's love.
Once he's gone, the parties stop, but people still keep coming to the house thinking there's going to be a party, and then they go away disappointed.
Which is also part of the emptiness of the money, right?
Yeah. There's also a kind of a close connection between this book and Babbitt, which we talked about.
Didn't that
before.
come out in the 20s as well?
That came out in 22.
Yeah. Okay.
And Babbitt isn't kind of the new money, the new city, what American culture is coming to, and that's part of what Gatsby's part of.
Yeah.
But Gatsby, Babbitt ultimately realizes that the American dream isn't, if all it's about is acquiring wealth, then it's not going to make you happy. And what makes Gatsby a superior character, I guess, to Babbitt is that he already knows that. The money isn't going to make him happy.
It's not the money, it's what the money can do.
That's right.
Right. So that's why he's pursuing it, because he has a love interest that he thinks it's going to help him. Yeah,
and it's this other symbol, but one of the main symbols in the book is the Valley of Ashes, but the other one is the green light. Before Nick even knows him, he sees Gatsby out at the end of his pier looking across the bay at this green light, and it's the green light that's coming from Daisy's house.
Oh.
So that green light is the goal that you keep trying to reach. And
so close, but yet so far.
Yeah, but ultimately you can't reach it. And that's how the book ends. The book ends with this evocation of the green light, and Nick himself is looking at it. If this is a tragedy, Nick is kind of the chorus, it seems to me.
Well, he's the participant observer, right?
Yeah.
Because he isn't of this world completely, because it's this huge amounts of money, right?
Yeah.
And these parties, etc. And you do get that sense throughout that he's like, you know how you feel when you're at somebody else's house for a holiday or a party. It's not your house, it's not your party, and you're just kind of going along, watching everything.
Yeah.
You have a different perspective than the participants in it, because you're just enough outside of it that you can tell the story.
Yeah.
And you can start to see, like, you think you're doing this, but actually, this is what's happening.
Which is what the chorus in a tragedy usually does.
Yeah.
So Nick is actually looking at the green light at the end of the book, and he says, Gatsby believed in the green light, in the orgiastic future that year by year recedes before us. It keeps getting further away. You try for it and you just can't get to it.
Yeah.
It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms further, and one fine morning. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. You
so
keep
he was
going, but you can't get there. You'll never get there.
But it sounds like he's been really changed by the hope of the animated Gatsby.
Yeah.
Or he's been impacted by it.
Yeah.
Gatsby, you might say, has riz.
Yes.
He's got the riz.
He's got the riz. He's the goat.
He's the goat. He's the riz goat.
Okay.
Okay, there. I've exceeded my young person slang. So why is this book lovable to you, J. Ruud?
Well, I don't have a lot of personal investment in it, but I love things that are kind of modern takes on medieval legends, because I'm a medievalist. And this is a kind of modern take on that whole Grail quest.
And the motif.
And the motif of the Grail Knight and the wasteland.
Yeah.
So that personally appeals to me.
I have a very important question to ask, actually, that comes to mind.
Okay.
Which movie was better, Robert Redford or Leonardo DiCaprio?
Actually, there have been 4 movies.
Well, that's not my question.
There was a movie in 1926 that came out just a year after the book but that's been lost. So
Okay.
we don't know whether that was
Okay,
any
I
good.
want to know Robert Redford or Leonardo DiCaprio
I
versions.
personally liked the Robert Redford one better.
Me too, because I did really like Mia Farrow as Daisy.
Well, I just liked Robert Redford more as Gatsby, although Leonardo is probably the best current choice.
Yeah. I thought the Mia Farrow's Daisy has got that kind of surface allure and false fragility. I don't know how else to describe Daisy, but do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So interesting. All right. So why might people not love this book? Because lots of people love it.
I don't know if I've ever met anybody who had read this book that didn't like it, but I think possibly you might not like it if you want something with a lot of action. You know, it's kind of I mean, there is some action toward the end, but it's mostly talking, and it's about society and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's hard to imagine people not liking this book.
Yeah. Okay. Where do you rank it? This is the 12th. So
yeah, well, I'm going to put it up. Well, maybe right behind To Kill a Mockingbird.
ooh, what's that? Number 4 or 5? Okay.
Okay.
You're going to put the list on the website.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have it in front of me. But,
Right. Okay. So behind
it's
To
like,
Kill a Mockingbird.
it's probably around number 5.
Yeah. Okay.
But
All
I'm
right.
gonna put it
so
right after To Kill a Mockingbird.
up there. It's
Yeah.
up there. Okay. All right.
All right.
That's good talk.
Then it must be time for Chaos Reader.
It is. So, as I said last time, I'm still reading the biography of Catherine, Princess of Wales. But we are reading a book aloud by Louise Erdrich. It's called The Last Report on the Miracles at Little No Horse, a novel. And we got a signed copy of this book at Louise Erdrich's bookstore,
Which is
Birch
in
Bark.
Minneapolis.
Yes, Birch Bark Books in Minneapolis near Lake of the Isles. It's a beautiful store with a lot of native art, jewelry, and a lot of native books, authors, poets. There's native language cards.
Yeah.
There's a lot of children's books. And it's really, I've never been anywhere like it. It was a very special place. And if you want any Louise Erdrich books, she's a winner of the Pulitzer Prize.
As well as the National Book Award.
As well as the National. She is a major force in American
many
fiction
awards
today.
We might talk about her at some point.
We might.
In this series.
I'm suspecting there's one coming at us. But if you go there, they have all of her books, and many of them are signed because she goes in once a week or so to sign books and copies.
If you're really lucky, you might get there when she's there.
We did not.
No,
but,
we were not lucky that way.
We took my mother, almost 99-year-old mother, and she really loved that. She found a book she liked as well. So we're reading this, and it's crazy. It's wonderful. As a priest on the Ojibwa reservation in Minnesota, and the priest
who's like 99 years old.
The priest is very old and writes regular letters to the Vatican. Turns out, this is not a spoiler because it says so on the back. The priest is actually a woman who's been living as a priest since her 20s, early 20s maybe, on the Ojibwa reservation. And that we have yet to meet the Leopolda who's up for sainthood. And apparently, according to Father Damien, is actually evil. So
yeah.
So we can't wait to find out what happens next. But it's a wonderful Louise Erdrich novel because characters, what she does is she writes these novels where they focus on a character, and then like characters that are major characters in other novels of hers just come in as little minor characters, and you're like, oh, I know them, but they're not the focus of the novel. So she really does build a world, and it's populated by all these really rich characters that just go on and on.
It reminds me a lot of Faulkner. And the Yakima County books where you get other characters coming in and out who've been in other books. Yeah,
and the writing is just a joy. And it is really fun to read aloud because of that. So that's where I am right now. Hopefully I'll make some progress on my Catherine biography and move on from there.
All right.
So I think we need to remind people to like, comment, and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts, because we're still doing our contest where we're going to choose a winner from those who comment on, write a review on Apple Podcasts. And especially if you want to comment there and say what your, the true love of your book life is. We'd love to see what book you love the most. And we will draw a name from people who've reviewed our podcast and give away next time and give away copies of our books to the winner. So also we'd like to ask you to just tell one of your book loving friends, maybe somebody in your book group, about our podcast and get the word out.
All right.
And of course, thanks to our wonderful producer, Jerry Bruno, who does all the things.
All the things.
You're welcome.
And I'm sorry that I don't always remember to do what he tells me to in the podcast. But I'll do better next time.
Next time. We'll get it right next time. We didn't get much done today, but we'll give her hell tomorrow.
That's right. So thank you, and we'll see you next time. Between the covers.